I buried more bodies than I can count.
40 years, 3 cities, 1 mask. I thought I was fighting a disease. I was wrong about almost everything. The plague isn't a sickness of the body, it's something else entirely, and it took me 40 years to see it. By then, I'd already lost everyone I loved. If I'd understood this in 1347, I would have run without hesitation. Instead, I stayed and watched it happen. 3 times. My name doesn't matter anymore. They just call me the Plague Doctor now. I came to Marseille, 26 years old. I believed medicine could stop anything. The Grand Saint-Antoine docked that May, carrying silk and death. Within weeks, 100 people were dying every day. By the end, Marseille lost half its people. I watched merchants die first, then their families, then their neighbors, block by block. Everyone died the same way, but they didn't die at the same speed. That's exactly where this story actually starts. I didn't understand it then. I just wrote it down and kept moving. I had no idea I was collecting the answer. It would take me 40 more years to read it. By then it was too late for most of them. Not too late for me to understand, just too late to save anyone with it. That's the part that still keeps me up at night. At first I thought it was random, bad luck. Then I started tracking every single case. Rue de l'Escale lost 90% of its people. 1 street over, barely a third died. Same air, same rats, same priests praying. So why did 1 street survive and the other didn't? I started asking questions nobody wanted to answer. The dying street was packed, 12 people per room. The surviving street had space, windows, distance. I noticed something else in the burial records. The poor quarter buried people for 6 straight weeks. The merchant quarter, less than half that time. Disease didn't choose randomly. It followed something. It followed crowding. It followed hunger. It followed neglect. The wealthy quarantined themselves in country houses. The poor had nowhere else to go. I wrote this in my journal and told no one. The city blamed rats first, then bad air. They called it miasma, poison rising from the swamps. Doctors before me believed this for 400 years. Then the city blamed sin, God's punishment for excess. Officials even whipped a scapegoat through the streets. It changed nothing. People kept dying the next morning. I saw something the rat theory couldn't explain. Some houses full of rats had 0 deaths. Some houses with no rats lost everyone. The disease wasn't appearing. It was moving. It moved through touch, through breath, through bodies close together. And sometimes it vanished where no one treated it at all. An isolated farm outside the city lost no one. They simply had distance, nothing more. No doctor visited them. No priest blessed them. Distance did what prayer and medicine couldn't. I started to suspect the truth was almost insulting. Simple enough that a child could understand it. Too simple for the men who ran the city. I brought my notes to the city magistrate in June. I told him crowding and poverty were killing people faster. He told me to stop spreading dangerous ideas. Blaming rats kept the docks open. Blaming poverty didn't. Marseille's economy depended on that port staying active. Admitting the truth meant admitting who the plague really hurt. The magistrate said the truth was more dangerous than the disease. In this city, you didn't question the official story, especially not if you were just the plague doctor. I went back to my rounds and said nothing more. For 14 years, I kept my notes hidden. I watched London repeat Marseille's mistakes. Same crowding, same poverty, same denial from officials. 100,000 Londoners died that year. The rich fled to the countryside within days. The poor were locked inside their own houses to die. I read the reports and recognized every pattern. Nobody in London had read my notes from Marseille. Nobody wanted to. Years passed. I stopped asking why. I just treated people. It was easier not to think about the pattern. Then in 1738, a boy named Etienne changed that. He was healthy that morning, running through the street. By evening, he had a fever and swollen glands. By the next dawn, he was gone. He lived in a room with 9 other people, 3 windows for the entire building. None of them opened. I'd seen this exact building 30 years earlier.
Nothing about it had changed since Marseille. Different city, different decade, same conditions, same outcome. That's when it stopped being a theory for me. Etienne didn't die from bad air or an angry god. He died because 9 people shared 3 windows. He died because his family couldn't afford anywhere else. The disease was just the last step in a longer chain. Something had already failed him long before the fever came. It's not a curse. I stopped believing that decades ago. It's not punishment from God for anyone's sins. It's not bad air rising from the swamps. And it was never really about the rats. The rats just carried what the city had already built. Crowded housing, no clean water, no sanitation, no margin. Yersinia pestis needs a host to jump between people. Poverty is what puts people close enough for it to jump. Distance is what stops it. Every single time I saw it. Venice figured this out by 1377, before anyone understood why.
They held incoming ships offshore for 40 days straight. 40 days. 40 giorni. That's where quarantine comes from. They didn't know about bacteria. They just knew distance worked. Cities that separated people survived. Cities that crowded them didn't. That's the pattern hiding under 400 years of plague. People call it a disease that strikes at random, but it never struck the wealthy quarters the same way. It struck exactly where people had already been failed. Overcrowded rooms, starvation wages, no sewers, no say in anything. The bacteria just finished what the system had already started. That's not superstition, that's just how the numbers looked. Every outbreak I lived through followed the exact same map. Rich streets thinned out, poor streets emptied completely. I call it plague because that's the word we have. But what I actually watched for 40 years was neglect, with a body count. I'm old now. My hands shake too much to treat anyone. I mostly just watch the city from this window. I still keep my old notes from Marseille. Sometimes I read Etienne's name and sit with it. Every few decades, a new outbreak arrives somewhere. And every time, I already know where it will hit hardest. Not randomly, not by curse, not by the will of rats. It hits wherever people were already left with nothing. I spent 40 years treating a symptom and calling it the disease. The real disease never had a Latin name. It was distance. Who gets it and who doesn't? The plague just collected on people the system already abandoned. I don't wear the mask anymore. I don't need to. I see the pattern now with my bare eyes. 40 years too late to save the people I buried. Not too late to finally say it plainly. The plague was never a disease. It was always just neglect, wearing a doctor's mask.